840 prisoners surrounded by death decided to rise rather than fall. They ignited Treblinka with hope, but amidst the confusion, only a few would survive to tell the story. It is the tale of the Treblinka uprising on the 2nd of August, 1943, a last act of bravery against one of the darkest corners in history. Prisoners who had nothing to live for but despair plotted a rising, brought in arms, and fought to escape from the center of an extermination camp. Almost 400 escaped beyond the fences, but less than 70 survived the war. Before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more untold survival and bravery stories. Treblinka. 2. One of the 3 Operation Reinhard extermination camps opened in July 1942, and its objective was ghastly clear: to erase the Jewish community from existence. The minimum number of killed is estimated at no less than 780,863, a figure that still sends shivers down the world. From the beginning, the Germans had a sinister plan. All labor in the camp would not be performed by its masters, but by Arbeitsjuden, the Jewish prisoners who had been spared the gas chambers to work the machinery of death. An average of 700 to 1,500 prisoners worked in the so-called lower camp, intimidating victims from trains, robbing them of their valuables and dignity, sorting plundered goods, even shaving off women's hair before their last stroll to the gas chambers. Meanwhile, between 300 prisoners were dragged into the upper camp, the killing zone. Their work was horrific, draining chambers of bodies, extracting gold teeth from mouths, and burying the dead in bottomless pits, later incinerating them. If you were selected to work, you lived in a state of perpetual fear of being killed and replaced at any time, and yet because of this, some did not go quietly. The stabbing of SS officer Max Biala by Mayor Berliner was the initial flame of defiance, but it also resulted in savage reprisal. Only later did Commandant Franz Stangl establish permanent work squads, marginally bettering conditions. Yet even these improvements were not mercy. They were intended to keep the killing machine running with ruthless efficiency. But even in a space designed to obliterate hope, murmurs of resistance started to stir. By early 1943, things changed inside Treblinka so that resistance became possible. The executions slowed down, which meant the working Jews lived a little longer and grew closer to each other. Fewer transports came in, and that silence had its own horror. If the trains no longer arrived, perhaps the camp itself would soon be dissolved, and the witnesses to its atrocities annihilated. Glimpses of news from Stalingrad and other battlefronts seeped in, and prisoners understood the Germans were not invincible. If the Reich were crumbling, then certainly the Guards would attempt to cover their tracks and eliminate them all. Escape by individuals had previously been a possibility, but by the end of 1942, security had become more stringent until such aspirations almost disappeared. Hence, survival could only appear possible through solidarity and uprising. A clandestine organizing committee had emerged within the lower camp under the initial leadership of Dr. Julian Korozicki, a Warsaw doctor and army captain. They were accompanied by men of brains and discipline. Kwi Kurland, a capo Jelomir Bloch, a Czechoslovak army officer Israel Sudovich, an agriculturist, and Vladislav Salzburg, a furrier. Adolf Friedman, a French Foreign Legionnaire soldier, later joined them. These were not wild men, but inmates who knew that silence equaled certain death. They tried to get weapons through bribery and clandestine trade with peasants, but initial efforts were unsuccessful. When money was found on Korozicki, he preferred suicide to betraying the cause. Leadership then changed hands, but the dream of uprising continued. There was inspiration from the Warsaw Ghetto Revolt and from every German defeat. By June 1943, the committee had grown to 60 members organized into close groups awaiting their opportunity. Even the killing zone produced its own conspirators. Bloch and Friedman went on with their work there, constructing another clandestine network in the face of betrayal and impossibility. And through the bravery of men like Carpenter Yankiel Wiernik, who traveled between camps, the two branches merged. In the face of watchtowers, barbed wire, and machine guns, they were going to take action. Then, as fear closed like a noose, the plotters made the toughest decision of all, to gamble everything now, or to delay and risk being wiped out for good. The organizing committee procrastinated in the face of swelling ranks and increasing pressure. Their hesitation was a result of grim calculation and frail hope. Between June and July 1943, life in the lower camp became marginally easier. The Germans eased discipline transports were slowed, and prisoners were less overworked. For that reason, some leaders believed there could be a possibility of staying alive a little longer. But the atmosphere in the upper camp was otherwise. There the men were excavating and cremating almost 700,000 corpses, and they knew the end was near. If the work of cremation completed, they would be next. Therefore, urgency permeated the barracks. If the rebellion started too early, it might collapse and seal the fate of all prisoners. But if it delayed, it would be too late. The higher camp insisted on taking action, and at last served the lower camp an ultimatum and made them fix a date. Conferences on the 30th and 31st of July sealed the plan, and the leaders opted for Monday the 2nd of August in the afternoon as the day to strike. Their scheme was brutal and meticulously detailed. The objective was to capture the camp, to dismantle the killing machinery, and then escape north and east to cross the Bug River and seek refuge in the Bialoyeza forest. Groups had specific assignments. Sudowich and his unit would take the armory and attack the guards barracks. Salzburg would conduct the struggle in the ghetto Kurland, with Galewski would lead the sorting yard. The conspirators felt they could overrun and burn the camp in an hour, and thus made the mass escape plan start in the dead of night. The top camp was given the toughest work. Their day ended at noon in the sun, which meant that most prisoners would be within the fenced enclosure at rising time. If the precise time was not known, then they stood the risk of being mowed down by the watchtower guns. So Wiernik was to carry messages and find out the time of attack. They also set to entice and silence the most menacing tower sentinel with gold, and then take him out quietly. It was a scheme constructed out of desperation, courage, and cautious calculation. If it failed, it would be disaster. But if it succeeded, it would be the single most powerful act of rebellion in the midst of an extermination camp. And then, the day that all the whispers had foretold of at last arrived. The uprising, a day of fire and defiance. The night of August 1st was electric, with tension so fine it could be sensed in the air. Kurland brought the hand-picked conspirators of the lower camp together and united them with an oath. By morning, the prisoners marched to their work, as if nothing was different. Days later, over 100 were shot. All of the leaders of the revolt died in combat. If survival in avoiding both Germans and hostile locals, the chances were ruthless. Yet still about 70 prisoners beat those chances, taking refuge with Polish peasants, sheltering in woods, or masquerading as laborers until the arrival of liberation. Some even existed under assumed identities in Germany itself, until hostilities ceased. But every fugitive bore scars of betrayal. And yet, the rebellion would not be silenced. Every year on August 2nd, the bravery of Treblinka's prisoners is commemorated. Their act of defiance outlasted the camp, even as its remains were covered over. The last survivor of the rebellion, Samuel Willenberg, survived until 2016, his voice a living remnant of that desperate day when 840 prisoners decided on defiance rather than despair. Ultimately, the rebellion at Treblinka was something more than a desperate struggle. It was a message that even in the worst of conditions, the desire to rebel could never be suppressed. The uprising did not destroy the camp, perhaps, but it broke the silence of oppression and made history recall those who would not walk quietly into extinction. Their bravery sent a warning to their oppressors and inspiration to generations to come. If you felt this was a powerful story, let us know what you think in the comments. Share this with others so their courage is never forgotten, and be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the stories that history tried to bury. History tried to bury. History tried to